Hey everyone, today I'm talking with Tanessa Shears. She's going to tell you what she does much better than I do. Tanessa, welcome. Take it away.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. My name is Tanessa, and I am a health consultant. I specifically work with entrepreneurs to help them scale their business, but by helping them biohack their brain and their body with science. So we're looking at how can we increase the performance capacity of our energy, our brain, our focus, and our productivity by specifically taking action that's measurable on our health, whether that be mental health or physical health.
Awesome. I think this is so important to talk about, and it's something that I try to emphasize a lot because people are looking for shortcuts a lot of the time. Um, and that often means like looking at the tip of the iceberg of behavior
Mhm.
and assuming that if you just get this like tip or this like small change, that all your problems will go away. But I often say like you need to look deeper. You have to look at the systems in your life in order to make bigger changes. We're not talking about like make a 1% change in your life. We're like 10x or 5x or like revolutions here. And if you
Mhm.
want to do that, you have to look deeper. You can't make a huge career change just by going like, maybe I'll try this, maybe I'll try that, maybe I'll try this. And then you spend years kind of spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
So the idea that it's hacking your biology
Mhm.
in order to grow makes sense to me.
Yeah, and biohacking is one of those things like it's been around, but I think it's starting to like pick up in popularity. And I guess for those of your listeners that don't know what biohacking is, it's essentially using your own biology to its advantage. So doing things like that increase your longevity and increase your ability to focus and be present and feel healthy. It's like creating solutions to the problems that you experience, but with a way of measuring it. It's hacking your own biology, essentially doing things to improve your life with a measurable outcome.
Yeah. So why is that? Why is that important? I mean, why can't we, in your opinion, just jump right into um, like tactical goals or something?
Yeah, well, for one of the things that like we want to make sure that we're measuring things because we only have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of energy. So what I always want to know is if I'm going to put my energy into something, I want to make sure that I'm getting more energy out than I'm putting in. And the only way to know that is by tracking. So say for example that you're tracking your sleep. And I want to know if I spend time the night before doing this activity or this activity, that I'm directly seeing an impact in the quality of my sleep that I measure, right? So that if I'm feeling energized the next morning, I know why. And if something isn't working, I know not to spend any more time on it.
Okay. So on one hand, it's about changing the mentality of how you measure things and just keeping track. And that can translate to, pretty much anything if you develop that habit of like, see how I did,
Mhm.
adjust based on what makes sense. But again, it's not looking at like we're not having a conversation about like, I don't know, sales numbers or leadership
Mhm.
uh communication techniques or something like that. We're talking about biology hacking, and I think a lot of people who tend to watch these like coachy type things are in some way attaching it to business or career or something like that. Um, and so, really, my question is like, why do we need to talk about biology at all?
Because the majority of people I meet suffer on some level from brain fog. It's kind of just that like lack of clarity, the forgetfulness. You show up and you're trying to remember like an email address or a website that you want to check out. Things are not coming quite as quickly. And it's just kind of that overall sense of like you're getting that midday tired. And so many of us are suffering from this brain fog. And we look around and everyone's tired at the end of the day. Everyone thinks it's a struggle to get up. And this is so common that we just start to think that it's normal and we no longer look beyond what is possible for ourselves. So that's why it's so important is it comes into this like holistic way of taking care of yourself is looking at this whole concept of how can we take care of ourselves and how can we measure it and how can we feel the best every single day, whether it is in your relationships, whether it is in your entrepreneurship or your career. It's how can we show up fully present, energized, and enjoy the life that we're creating for ourselves.
So in a way, it's like slowing down and paying attention, you
Yeah,
know?
it's completely tuning in and being like, oh, wait a second. You mean waking up feeling tired every day isn't normal? Huh.
Right. There's just this assumption that we have about self-awareness,
Mhm.
you know? Like I know myself pretty well because I'm a thinker, you know,
Mhm.
because I'm smart, because I talk and I read and I,
Mhm.
you know, have an education and I work at a high level with smart people, et cetera, et cetera. Like I know myself, but um, we have we have this bias, this like mechanism in our brain that stops us from constantly questioning our reality. Because we did that, we'd go insane all the time. You
Yeah.
know, like if you didn't filter things out, like you can't take in all of the information all the time. So you just assume that what you know is true.
Mm.
The problem is when you've gotten to a plateau or like a stuck moment in your life that um, because you're programmed to not question those things, you end up stuck in that same mode. And so part of that I think is like being able to question the reality a little bit, to go a little bit deeper. So it's
Yes.
not just that tactical stuff. It's not just like, all right, what new article can I read?
Yeah.
You know, it's more like, all right, something's not working here. There's a reason I'm tired all the time. And maybe that's not normal. Oh my
Mhm.
God. You know, it's like, it's like this
Yeah.
crazy idea that the things you believe to be true aren't true, you know?
Yeah.
And part of that I think is, you know, like you're saying, sleep. I don't know, why are you plateauing? The why question, or the why of the why of the why. Going
Yeah,
a few layers on
you
the
know
why.
what's so interesting is we there's even like almost a step that comes before questioning, oh, is this tired not normal? It's I think one of the most profound moments for me in my self-coaching experience was recognizing that the opportunity to actually question things was an option. Like you said, we grow up with our beliefs that are given to us as kids and they just kind of stick and we don't even know that questioning them is an option before we've kind of dive in or dove into this world of coaching and personal development. Like just that was like I don't have to I don't have to think this. I can question this. Like just that like
Yeah,
sense that awareness
permission.
exists was like,
Yeah,
oh, it's like Pandora's box. You mean I can actually hear what I'm thinking on purpose? Whoa. Like it was really cool.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this radical idea that it's it's like the Matrix, you know,
Yes, I love
a
that.
little
That's
bit.
exactly what I say is like, is it the red pill or is it the blue pill? Like once you take that, you can't unsee it. And it's amazing. And there's often that time I find when I'm working with clients is after we kind of, unplug from the matrix, so to speak, there is that whole period of like, whoa, like I'm needing to adjust to realizing that everyone's thoughts are governing all their actions and my thoughts are governing my actions and my feelings. It's a really cool thing, but there's always that moment of like, holy moly. It's really
Yeah,
neat. I love it. I love it.
yeah. It usually comes, well, at least in my coaching class, like after a few sessions,
Yeah.
where they're like, this is getting really hard, you know, and there's this moment of like, things are harder now that you've started coaching than they were before.
Mhm.
And that's because of what you're saying. You know, it's like all of a sudden you've opened the floodgates in a way to saying, oh, I can question my beliefs. Like I didn't really think about my beliefs before. They were just, you know,
Belief.
life is just life.
Facts.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this way about people, that's a fact, you know.
Mhm.
I judge myself in a particular way. That's just a fact. It wasn't like, um, you know, I always say this like that the fish there's that commencement speech by David Foster Wallace where he talks about two fish passing by, and one's like, "Hey, you know, uh, the uh, the water is nice today." I forget exactly how it goes. And the other fish is like, "What's water?"
Because you can't see it because you're in it.
Because you're in it. You're like, you know, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, water? Oh
This
shit,
stuff?
this stuff."
Yeah.
Now I have like awareness of all of this,
Ah.
and now you have this kind of moment of, oh shit, now I have to figure all of this out, and that's a little scary.
Mhm.
And I think that happens in any person's transition, any life transition, and that stuckness is a little bit of the resistance to going, all right, this is water. I'm going to acknowledge it now.
Yeah.
You know?
I love it too, because though when you finally see the water, then you can start the water or thoughts, you can start taking responsibility for them, and then you can truly impact change on your life. And you're not just,
Right.
um, I guess the universe isn't controlling you anymore. You realize that you have a place in it, right? Like that you can have impact on your own life is when you are responsible for so much going on, especially in our own heads.
I know, right? And in our own bodies, to your point, you know.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I'm very curious to hear a little bit more about your story, like how you ended up recognizing that this biohacking is useful. Like what were you going through where you were like light bulb moment, you know, something has to change in my life kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, I was a personal trainer for years and years, and I had opened my own business. And when you get full as a personal trainer, it's a very on job, meaning it's like anything with coaching. It is a show for your clients, meaning you show up with
Mm.
energy and focus, and you want it to be an experience for them. And as an introvert, at the end of a day, if your mind isn't managed, this is before I really understood like self-coaching and stuff like that. I was very drained. I'd see 7, 8 clients back to back, and this is also in person at the time. And I would do this 5 days a week. And I was very drained. I had this wildly successful business, but I was so tired at the end of the day, because it doesn't work. It doesn't end as soon as we shut off from clients. There's scheduling, there's programming, there's client emails, there's marketing, there's the whole back end of the business. And I
Yeah.
was just really tired. And I remember I was sitting in bed with my husband one night reading, and I looked over at him. I was like, I'm reading this book. What do you think about cutting out sugar and flour for 30 days just to see what happened? And I didn't know that this was a type of biohacking before. I just read a
Yeah.
book, and I was like, I just want to A, see how mentally tough we are, and B, see what all this talk is about, and starting to notice that just how much food affects the way you feel, the way you think, the way the discipline you have, the emotional control you have, the ability to have a solid sleep. Like it was like, wow. And then just as that developed, you get more and more into this whole world of biohacking. And I think the biggest change really came when I had my daughter, and she's now 10 months old, and I have to compress a full-time business into about 25 to 30 hours a week, because it's what I can get in during her naps, before she wakes up at 8 a.m., or on the days I get help from my mom. And learning that I can't do that on the brain I've always had. I have to have a more elevated brain, a more focused brain, a productive brain, a brain that wakes up in the morning and is fired and ready to go. And I cannot do that if I'm neglecting my sleep, my nutrition, my movement, and my stress management.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what happened at that point?
Like when I started discovering sleep was, it's interesting. I had just this idea because I had read a book on sleep that found it really fascinating. And I did like a public sleep experiment on Instagram, where I would post the data from my sleep tracker that I wear every single
Hmm.
night. And I would show on spreadsheets, because I love a spreadsheet, exactly how my deep sleep changed, how much I dreamed, the length of my sleep, the time awake, how these components changed every time I implemented something different. I'm like, hey guys, I turned the temperature of my bedroom down to 18 degrees Celsius, and look what happened. Or, hey guys, I bought these funky blue light glasses that have red lenses instead of the yellow ones I've been losing. Look how much my deep sleep improved. And did this live over a 3-month period, and then was like,
Hmm.
oh, I need to summarize this. So in those hours that I created from having such high quality sleep, I created extra hours in the morning. I was like, I'm going to write a book on it because I have all this extra time. And it was amazing just how that has snowballed from there.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I want to put my blue light glasses on. Yep, that's what these are. Even though they look kind of weird in the reflection, but worth
Yeah,
it.
they
Okay.
always give a good glare, the blue light glasses.
Um, yeah, I don't have like bad vision, but I
Mhm.
will if I don't take care of these things.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, what was the book on? Do you remember the book, the sleeping book? Maybe it was a
Yeah.
while
It
ago.
was called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. It was like,
Cool.
yeah, wait, I don't know. For me, there's been some books that I've read on health that just like, when you feel your brain breaking open, and you're just like, oh my goodness, everyone needs to know this stuff. How can they not know it? And I'm always my own guinea pig first. So I always like to show the journey I'm going through on like Instagram or my newsletter, or kind of wherever I'm going through. And I'm like, look what's happening as I'm doing this. And that's how I like to really involve people in their own health, is like, I want to show them firsthand what I'm doing and how it's working. And so that they can see that, okay, I can trust this process. This is something I can try. Results are doable. She has a 4-month-old baby at the time. If she can work on her sleep, so can I. If she can run a business and work on her sleep, so can I. And that was kind of where I really liked sharing that journey.
I want to get a little like meta about this for a second.
Yeah.
So you, there was the accountability component of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like the thing you were doing is also the thing that you want to help people with. And I think that's um, common with coaches,
Mm-hmm.
that the thing you want to help people with is something either you've overcome yourself or that you're still working through, or that you wish your older self had, something
Yes.
like that. Um, and it's all very meta. It's a lot of like thinking about thinking about thinking, um, and doing about doing. So like the accountability component of that, could you talk about like why you posted it live? Like what was important about that?
Yeah. So I like to share all aspects of what I'm doing in my health. Cause for me personally, when I look at people that I am inspired by, I like to see the back end of their life too. Like I like to see like, okay, what does a day look like for you that makes you a successful business owner, a successful mom, a healthy person? Like I like to see the back end. So I started just naturally sharing that. And it was interesting. I just threw up my sleep numbers one day on an Instagram story, and I had an influx of comments saying,
Hmm.
what is that app? How did you do that? What are you doing to get these kind of sleep numbers and stuff like that? And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just do a quick Instagram live. And I found that it was actually everyone, the interest was there enough for me to continue posting. And it kind of, like I said, fueled into the accountability of me showing up, which accelerated my results. But I also had people doing it alongside me. I had people be like, hey, I also turned down my bedroom temperature last night. I feel great this morning. And it was so inspiring too, to be like, yes, I can help more people with this. This is great.
Yeah, I mean, what that says to me is how important community is too, and communicating and putting yourself out there, and not feeling like you're doing these things alone.
Yeah, I mean, I'd get family and friends and like people like that I had spoken to at the time, and they'd be like, "Yeah, I've been following your Project Sleep on Instagram," and it was such a thing. I was like, "Whoa, that's really neat."
It's so cool. That, I mean, that's one good thing about technology. I'm kind of a skeptic when it comes to social media in general,
Mhm.
but there's so many good things about it too, like what you're saying, and I'm sort of discovering Facebook groups, and how there's pretty much a group for anything that you're interested in or anything you're thinking about. There's definitely thousands of other people doing, unless it's really weird, I guess.
Yeah,
Probably even if it's really weird.
yeah, probably.
Um, and meetups and all kinds of stuff. So if you are in some sort of stuckness, or you're trying to grow in any particular way, there's people like 3 steps ahead of you, in whatever at whatever step you're at.
And those are the people you want help from too, because I find sometimes like, and I can use the example relating to business coaches. Like I've hired business coaches that are extremely successful. And back at the beginning where I was just so long ago that there's so much has changed on the business landscape in 10 years. But I love the idea of just observing and learning from people that are, like you said, 2, 3, 4 steps ahead, where they can look back and just be like, oh, pothole right there, watch out, or oh, there's a ditch right there, like, because I was just there. You know what I mean? There's that fresher perspective of having recently gone through that struggle. It's so much more relatable than like, oh yeah, 5 years ago I remember what that was like to try to go out and date or start a relationship or build a business.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Experience can be helpful, especially if it's a very specific
Mm.
thing you're trying to learn, and somebody has knowledge in that very specific area. Um, and you can talk to them about it. I mean, I think advice, I have like kind of contradictory views on advice, because sometimes I think it can be helpful in that way. Like if it's very specific,
Yeah.
I've done this exact thing that you're doing, and it's a piece of knowledge that I have that you don't, and you can go, hey, there's a pothole, watch out. I also think that so much of this stuff is like the advice is available online in one way or another, but there's a piece missing, which is the personalization. You know, like there's a million self-help books
Yeah.
and blog articles, and you can Google pretty much everything in the world. That you can find Facebook group and Instagram and da da da. But it's all like external
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. It's not it's not tacit knowledge. It's not like the internal knowledge that people need in order to grow.
Yeah.
It's all like external. And I think a big mistake that I see every freaking day is like people looking for that piece of advice
Mm-hmm.
that is somehow going to change everything, as opposed to looking for the right process
Yes.
to engage in with themselves or with somebody else that um, improves that sort of internal learning component, which is what's needed. And the reason I'm kind of a skeptic about social media sometimes is because it teaches us that instant gratification and quick fixes are the way to fame or
Mm-hmm.
to some notion of success.
Yeah.
Um, when in reality, it's I mean, that's just not how humans
Oh. I
learn
think
and work and grow.
I think it also teaches us too, like you said, that the answers are outside of us always. And I think the opposite is true. Like it's so interesting when my business coach has specifically said to me, You have everything you need to succeed. And I don't know is never an option. It's just an area of your brain you haven't pushed or explored before. So we like the kind of question I use it with my clients all the time is, well, what if you did know? Like just if you did know, what might that be? And I
Mm-hmm.
love the idea of
Love that question.
yeah, I love the idea of whenever I ask a question of her, I have to answer it myself first.
Hmm.
Even if it's completely off, even if I'm completely feel like I'm making it up, at least what I've done is develop the skill of going inside my own brain and finding an answer. Even if I get feedback, like that's great. I might try this too. I might try this too. It takes us off of the train of relying on other people to give us the answers to our questions. Because I think the answers are never outside of us. Like I think we can always figure out a lot of it. I think one of the beautiful things is having someone help show you that, but like you said, social media, it's all like, well, they have the answer for better sleep. Well, they have the answer for better nutrition. Where if we ask ourselves, like, if I look at the way I'm eating right now, what could I do just a little bit better? We'd have an answer for that. But we like to
Right.
delegate that responsibility to someone outside of us. And then we're always relying on someone else to come in and create the life we want for us.
Why do you think that is that people are looking externally?
I think it's just the way we're raised. I mean, with school, there is a right answer and a wrong answer on a test, like a math test. You either pass or you fail. It's not you failed, let's learn from it. It's just fail and don't do that. It's there is a correct answer all the time. The textbook says so. It's not your interpretation or what might apply to you specifically. There are right and wrong. There's no room in high school for interpreting, a geography quiz. There is right and wrong. And while some things, yeah, the capital of Canada is in a certain place, that is true, but we're not taught that there is another way to think. It comes back to that whole concept of questioning. Are there some answers I can find inside me, especially when it comes to my own life? I mean, we know ourselves best.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of a re-education
Yeah.
thing that we have to do. Um, and also, so when it comes to our bodies, what are some of the things that we need to think about re-educating ourselves about?
Sleep, 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 sleep. And I know firsthand how easy it is to go, yeah, I'm fine. Because there was a social media influencer I followed, a health one, a long time, and she started talking about sleep like 3 years ago. And I remember skipping through those stories, being like, yeah, I sleep 8 hours, I sleep 7 hours, I'm fine, and really thinking I had good sleep because I closed my eyes and opened them 7 hours later, 7.5 hours later. But until I ended up getting my Fitbit when I was pregnant because I wanted to use it as a way to keep me motivated to take enough steps. And I didn't
Mhm.
even know it had a sleep tracking feature on it at the time. But when I started seeing my sleep results, and I was like, you mean just because I close my eyes at 11 and open them at 7 and I'm only getting 7 hours of sleep? Like, I didn't even know that you naturally wake up at the end of each sleep cycle and you wake up multiple times a night but aren't aware of it. I didn't know that deep sleep exists or dream sleep or that they completely contribute to who you are, how you show up, your motivation, your memory, your problem solving, your ability to create. All of these things are directly tied to components during our sleep. And I feel like it's especially when it comes to like the brain optimization part and how we feel, it's the thing if we put our energy into would create 80% of the results cognitively that we're looking for.
I love that you're saying it's not just an hours. It's not just about hours.
No, because there's
Um,
a difference, yeah, between even like sleep opportunity, which we said is I close my eyes, I open my eyes, and what actually happens. Like most people have no idea what goes on during their sleep. Our brains don't like offer us a printout in the morning being like, great job. You know, you really could use some more deep sleep, but good job on that REM sleep. It would be like never looking at your bank account and trying to guess how much money you had all the time. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like such a good
right,
investment in your health and your brain is just to know what's going on during a third of your life.
right. I love the bank account thing. It's like, well, I opened a bank account,
Mhm.
therefore I have enough money.
I know. That's exactly what it is. It's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, I deposited a check a month ago, so that money all must still be there. Like, there's just no way to measure it without actually being proactive about it.
Right. And you are withdrawing and depositing from your energy all day long,
All
and
day
then
long.
recharging at the end of the day. And the ability for you to recharge isn't just an on off switch. It's a lot of variables, a lot of things going on while you're
Yes.
sleeping that
Yeah.
determine whether the charger actually worked, whether you what kind of charge you got, the
Yep.
quality of the fuel.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even just comparing like my last 2 nights of sleep, like last night, my sleep was a little rocky because, and I sat up this morning and it's like, I know exactly why. There's these four factors that I did, which created that sleep. And the night before that was amazing. And I know exactly why. But if I didn't, and I didn't take that time to figure out why, I would just kind of be waking up foggy all the time and showing up to my life feeling tired and needing 6 cups of coffee to keep going during the day. Like, I just was like, now that I know what it feels like to wake up full of energy and feet on the floor and be able to get the things done that move my life forward, my business forward, my relationships forward, like, there is no way I could go back. No way.
So what would be the importance of, I mean, you can read about some of these things.
Yeah.
There are great books about it. What is the difference? I mean, I can answer this for my own work, but what is it for you? What's the difference between reading it in a book and working with somebody on it?
So I find that there is this interesting misconception that the more you know, the more power you have. We've heard it before, knowledge is power, right? But I don't think it is power until you take action on it. Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
so that is what I find like and I'm guilty of it myself. It's called passive action. It's reading and reading and reading and it feels like you're doing something productive because you're like I'm educating myself. I'm getting healthier, but as long as you're in that state of consumption, it's passive action. It needs to move into that massive action phase in which before going and consuming 5 more books or an online course or 10 more podcasts, did I actually apply anything I learned? And did I see if that worked? Like, am I keeping that or am I leaving that? Am I tweaking it? Like, if we're just constantly like getting all this knowledge but never acting on it, like be I like the idea of just putting stuff out there and then giving yourself feedback on it before you move on. And it gets so easy to just like binge on information because I mean, with YouTube and IGTV videos and blogs and podcasts and courses, oh my gosh, there are so many opportunities to learn, but without taking actual action on it, it's not helpful at all, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different definition of knowledge. I mean, there's there's knowledge acquisition, which is the kind of consuming stuff type of knowledge, and then there's the kind of knowledge that is actionable, usable, sustainable, and it's like part of the
Yeah.
way that you see the world. That's a very different kind of knowledge, and in order to do that, in order to implement that, you have to confront a lot of discomfort. And I think that the reason
Mhm.
often that people aren't engaging in that kind of learning is because of fear. It's really just because
Yeah.
it's very uncomfortable. We're programmed to seek comfort, to get out of the way when something dangerous is coming that we perceive as dangerous. And if you're being told to question something that you've always taken for granted, that is a moment of discomfort. And it's
Yeah.
much easier to go, let me go read another book about this thing,
Mhm.
as opposed to begin to take action. Even though reading a book might take you a month, or 6 months because you don't really read it, you're just kind of like, oh, I'm reading about sleep, and you're not really doing anything about it, as opposed to the discomfort, facing the discomfort. And that could be like something that you do in a week or in a month or in a short period of time,
Mhm.
which is really going to change a lot of stuff. I'm just thinking about a client that I have who I suggested an exercise, and this particular client was doing some of the exercise, but then began to like read about the exercise and what's behind the exercise. And I was like, look, do the exercise. That was what's going to help. The knowledge about how it works is not the same as actually engaging with the process of the exercise itself.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. And like you were talking about, like that discomfort and coming up against actually taking action, that is the currency to the results in the future we want. Like that is one of the biggest things, whether we're dealing with working in the mind or on the body, it's that discomfort, having to really address what it means to sit in discomfort and not make it mean anything. Right? To know that I'm only going to read this one book, because this is what I did with that sleep book. I read it, I wrote down, I understood it. I wrote down all the strategies and I implemented them one at a time. And I saw, okay, I'm going to cut blue light out an hour before I go to bed. What are my results? That worked. Keep it. Next strategy. Oh, I didn't like that. Next strategy. And I went through systematically. And that is how like you gain the wisdom in knowing what works, right?
Totally. So then, like, why don't people just do this? Like, why do individuals have such a hard time uh, doing exactly what you're doing?
I think just the inability or the lack of knowledge on self coaching and the unwillingness to sit in true discomfort and to look at what's going on in their life or how to say no to themselves. That's a really big one, especially like one of the things that I'm a fan of, like I said, is doing the 30 days of no sugar, no flour, not only to kind of reset. And this isn't saying that this is how I eat all the time or my clients eat all the time, but it's a way of kind of just like a reset. Like I want to just clear everything out. And I also want to find your tolerance for discomfort, because we all know how food cravings work. We've all had one. And I often ask my clients, like, what would happen if you just sat in the discomfort? Like, what does that feel like? And you get into like, well, my stomach feels tight and I can feel my breath is a little shallow and I get a little heart racy and I can kind of feel like I'm like grabby. And it's a feeling that I have. And I'm like, I want you to just sit in it. Just sit in it. It's kind of like the idea of, you know how when you get a cold and you're like, ah, this sucks. But you don't fight with it. You don't go around and go, this is the worst. You just go through it. It doesn't feel good. You have a runny nose. Maybe you're sick for a couple days, but it passes. So this is how I like to be like, we need to learn how to manage discomfort this way. It comes up. We're not excited about it, but we know it passes, and being willing to go through that experience, everything we want is on the other side of that ability to be uncomfortable, whether it be food, whether it be asking for a promotion, whatever that is in your life. It's learning how to be to be okay with whatever feelings come up without fighting them, rushing them out, just being present with what is.
I love that. And um, I want to drill down a little bit more into that because there are a lot of people, and I talk to these people all the time, because people who have achieved a lot, who are high achievers, who are motivated, who are ambitious, who have done a lot of stuff in the past, um, still have trouble with this, even though it's like, hey, I'm pushing myself past my comfort zone. I'm trying new things. I'm like, you know, still plateauing, still stuck. And there are many reasons for that. So you can even get stuck in this idea that like I'm trying to push back past my comfort zone and it's not working.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think in that case? If you're at that point where you're like, I've tried stuff. It's not like
Mhm.
I'm sitting here twiddling my thumbs. What's not working? I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you say to people?
You know what? The way I love to answer this question, I actually heard Tony Robbins speak on it once, and I was like, oh, this is so good. And he was talking about, maybe, I think it was like a weight loss example or something like that. And they're like, well, I've tried this and this and this, and I've tried everything and nothing's working. And he's like, list everything you've tried. And they end up
Mhm.
listing like 5 things. And he's like, that's it? That's everything you've tried? He's like, there are infinite ways to try something, whether that, even if that be just to tweak something little. And he goes, I never want to hear He said to you to say that you've tried everything because it doesn't exist. Like the idea that we've tried everything really is just a belief that there are no other options. I am stuck. But I like the idea that what if I just try everything? If I try, like, continue to try things and being open to experiencing the failure with each trial, I'm eventually going to accidentally run into something that makes me successful. But if you believe that you tried everything, you're not going to get anywhere. So it's really just looking at that as like, even that is a belief. And if I'm going to choose that nothing that I'm never going to reach the end of possibilities I can try, that lets me know there is something that works. I haven't found it yet. And if I fail enough times, I will find it. And I found
Yeah,
that.
and that's a muscle too,
Yeah.
It's like, I think that when you start to go, okay, all right, I get that concept,
Yep.
but how does it actually apply? It's not work. That's not working either. Well, I would say that it's, it's a muscle. It's like you don't lift 400 pounds of that, of like putting that to your comfort zone. You can't lift 400 pounds worth of that at once. First, you
Mhm.
have to lift 5 pounds, and then fail at that, and then 10 pounds, and fail at that. And when you get to muscle, what's it called? Confusion muscle. What's it called? When you
Adaptation. Yeah.
Yeah, when you get to the point where your muscle is failure, muscle failure, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's the same thing with like mental muscle failure, but because you have a built-in program that says, no, this is bad.
Mhm.
When you're lifting weights, you know that you get to muscle failure and that's good and that's growth.
Mhm.
That's like the program that you have in your head. This is good. It hurts. I'm sweating. It's hard, but like, I know this is good for me.
Yep.
Whereas with the muscle the mental muscle growth, it's not intuitive like that. It's not like I'm pushing myself. This sucks. I failed. This is good. It's like, no, it sucks. I failed. I'm a bad person. I suck.
Mhm.
I'm not good at this. I'm never going to succeed. And then the stories and the stories and the stories.
Yeah. It's the I am belief that comes in. It's not what I tried failed. It's I failed. And I think that that is the fear is I have talked to so many clients who are like, I'm so scared of failing, but it's really taking off. It's like, well, what if just trying it this way failed and it wasn't anything to do with you that failed, right? Like it's really defining to understanding, taking the edge off of failure. I think that's what's really important too, because that is what is limiting us from continuing to try, is continuing to have to experience failure over and over again and doing that willingly, knowing it's uncomfortable.
Right. That's that growth mindset stuff. That's
Mhm,
the
mhm.
difference between something is changeable and learnable and improvable versus the belief that this is the way it is.
Yeah.
Most of the time, we don't have a lot of awareness about our own mindset around those things
Mhm,
because again, we're just not programmed for that. You can't see yourself
mhm.
in that way. You need other human beings. I mean, we're also programmed for other human beings. We need a tribe. We need a community. You need other humans to bounce things off of you and to say like, you know, this is how you impact other people. This is the thing that you said that here's what it really sounds like.
Yep.
You can't hear yourself doing that. Really, which is why you need other people. You need a coach. You need a friend. You need a mentor. Um, I don't know, a therapist, like other humans. And I don't want to just advocate for coaching here either, because there's a time and place for different uh, methodologies.
Yeah.
Depending on what it is.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We cannot see our own thinking and we cannot see our own trouble spots. Like a really good example that happened to me actually within the last year, when I was 14 weeks pregnant, I went to my coach and I was like, I cannot see how to run this business that takes up my entire life, my unlimited free time. How do I do that with a baby and me staying at home? It's not going to work. I'm going to have to wind you know how our brains like to spin out in all of that drama.
Yeah,
And
me
she
too.
said, to me, she goes, do not delegate the responsibility of your business to your baby. You are completely creating your emotional responsibility, the success of your business, all to that baby who hasn't
Hmm.
even been born yet. If you wind down your business, that is your decision. If you spin out in overwhelm, that is your decision. And she goes, don't delegate that because you're having a baby. All of this is going to happen. And I was like, Oh my gosh. And I couldn't even see that I was doing that. I just thought it was so reality. Like I have half the time. How is this possible? But I was making it the responsibility of, because I was having a baby, my business wouldn't work. And I was just seeing that as a fact instead of like, that's a circumstance. And lo and behold, I learned how to do it just fine. I actually have more free time now because I have to be so productive with the time I have. But it's just, I couldn't see that at all. The only option I could see was going out of business. Because how do you do that? Because everyone loves to tell you you're never going to sleep again. You're going to be so tired all the time. You're going to be so busy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was taking on everyone else's stories and trying to predict what I thought that might be like. And it's kind of like the idea of, when you book a hotel online and you're booking it based off of all the photos you see, and you legitimately think you have an idea what you're getting yourself into. If you ever showed up at a hotel and you're like, what? Were these pictures taken 20 years ago? Like, we think we have the ability to predict what something is going to be like, but we don't. And we
We
need
don't.
to recognize that and then take on the fact that whatever future I'm creating is my responsibility, not an outside circumstance, whether that be a baby or something else.
Yeah, it's a lot of unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
And like accepting that there are unknown unknowns in your life
Mhm.
is kind of an ego shock,
Mhm.
you know? And if you are in a state where you're like, I've always figured shit out in my life,
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person who has things figured out, that's the
Mhm.
kind of person I am, then admitting to yourself that there are unknown unknowns that, you just don't have the capacity to recognize and to see that things aren't going as well as they could is like, you also have to admit that you're not as perfect and everything is together as you thought. That's like, it stings, That's a
Yeah.
tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that is like so much growth and possibility. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I mean, we would if we didn't have mirrors, we wouldn't know what we look like.
I know. Yeah.
you know, just because you go, well, I think I'm pretty sexy. You have
Yeah.
to look in the mirror and go like, oh, all right, I got to do my hair. And the mirror can tell you that.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to say much. It's like, here you go. Here's what you said. Here's what
Yes.
you're doing.
Yes, that's what I love about coaching, and it's like it's literally having a mirror held up to you, and you see the things that you weren't able to see. It's it's reflecting back, and it's honestly, that's why I'm able to speak so highly of coaching, is because I've experienced that in myself, of the changes that I've experienced because of the awareness I was given because I couldn't see it in myself. It was just so worth it, you know?
I know. I'm like trying to think of an example here of, something that thing that I've been reflected back to. I don't know, like some belief that I had that I said to a coach, and then the coach was like, so you just said this is true. And it wasn't even a judgment or an interpretation of it. It's like, you just said this person is shitty,
Mhm.
something like that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, I just said that. Like those exact words just came out of my mouth
Yeah.
in that tone. And then you see it, and then you're like, oh, I see that belief now. Now it's
Yeah.
visible.
Yeah.
Before it was invisible, now it's visible.
Yeah.
Now I can do something about it. Now I have control. Now I can make a choice about whether I'm going to keep it, use it, or change it, flip it, or avoid it. But then the avoidance is a choice too. It's like,
Mhm.
all right, I know I'm avoiding this, but it's the elephant in the room now. It's not invisible, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Then it becomes a choice to avoid it as well.
Yeah. And at least you're aware of I mean, that's a big step too. Like, all right, now I'm seeing the things I'm avoiding,
Mhm.
and like you can tackle them one at a time, like as is appropriate. You can't do it all at once, of course. It's a process, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so like what other kind of biohacky awesome gold nuggets can you tell us we've talked about sleep,
Yeah.
talked a little bit about the diet, like the 30-day diet
Mhm.
intensive a little bit. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah. So one of the reasons I do it is because, especially because I work with entrepreneurs, like my job is to make them operate at 90% of their peak capacity during their working hours. Like most of us are slugging around at 50 to 60%. Like I want clear, focused brains. So with the no sugar, no flour specifically, what I'm targeting, like I said, is twofold. I'm targeting what is your willingness to tolerate discomfort. That's part one. Part two is I'm looking at physiologically, how can we get your blood sugar and your insulin under control? Because when we eat, especially if we eat foods that are really high in like starchy processed foods and carbohydrates and stuff like that, like I'm talking like big pasta dishes, I'm talking about like really bready sandwiches and stuff like that. Like inherently, there's food is food. I don't have an opinion on it, but I know what it does to our body. So when we eat those foods, our blood sugar goes up and our insulin goes up. And naturally, what goes up, what comes down. And we're experiencing those, midday energy crashes. And we are feeling tired after lunch. Like when you finish a meal, you should be light, content, and satisfied. You shouldn't feel tired, no headaches, bloating, gas, any of that is something I ate just didn't work. And when it's kind of like being unaware of your thoughts. Until you feel how good your body should feel, it's very hard to recognize how bad you're feeling.
Yeah.
So by cutting out sugar and flour, what I'm allowing them to do is see, this is how good my body can feel. And then I'm like, well, how did that affect your work? How did that affect your midday activity? Are you needing endless cups of coffee? We're looking at all of those variables. And then at the end, I get to go, would you like to add that back in? And there's always a little bit like, I find that there's like, yeah, you know what? On the weekend, I want to go out and have a hamburger and a beer. And I'm like, great, plan it in. But what I often find is like, you mean I haven't had to have headaches all day or I haven't been bloated and my work is really focused? I often find that it's such an easy choice to stay with it
Mm-hmm.
because every time they have the burger and the beer on the weekend, they come back and they're like, I feel terrible. And it's just, did
Mm-hmm.
I
It's like a
always
hangover.
feel like this? And I'm like, you did. You just didn't know it because you had nothing to contrast it with. So that's where I start with that. And the whole point of it, like I said, is we're looking at, it's called glycemic variability. We're looking at how often during the day are you fluctuating your blood sugar, creating energy crashes, creating inflammation that's causing your brain fog. I just want to eliminate that and start that as like a blank slate.
You said, that the glycemic variability, and what you have to do is keep it fairly steady, right? That's the aim,
Yep.
so that you're not fluctuating. As opposed to heart rate variability,
I love heart rate variability.
which is the opposite, right? Like you want those big fluctuations to stay healthy. I'm assuming you work on that as well to an extent, right?
Yeah. Well, and heart rate variability is just looking at how your heart rate responds to stress. Because if we think of like when you're stressed out or you just got scared, your heart rate becomes very rhythmic, like bing, 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 bing. So when that is the case, there's a variability we can measure called heart rate variability. And it's low when your body is experiencing chronic stress. And that just doesn't have to be mental stress. It can be physical stress from workouts. And it can also be if you're not responding well to nutrition, under eating, eating foods that cause inflammation, anything like that. But when we are in a relaxed state, when we are managing our minds, we're taking care of our bodies, what happens is the space between your heartbeats is not consistent. It naturally has a little bit of, some are shorter together, some are longer, and we can't observe them, but in a measurement form, you can observe them. And that means your heart rate variability is higher. So we're seeing numbers like, 110, 120, which I've seen sometimes even up to 150. This means your body is in a state which is going to support clear thinking, good sleep, proper nutrition. When you're chronically experiencing low heart rate variability, then you're often in that fight or flight response and you can't get out of it. And this is not something that can just be measured with like a Fitbit. There needs to be either like a chest strap. I know that those do them. The Oura Ring does it. There are some, I think the Bio Strap might even do it, but there are certain devices and it's not just a regular heart rate on a watch.
It's
But
an EKG, right? Like it's a full. Isn't that an EKG essentially that you're
I'm
wearing
sure
all the
you
time?
could do it on an EKG, but there's actually like just common devices like have you heard of the Oura Ring?
No.
Okay, so it's a sleep tracker that's on a ring, but it actually measures heart rate variability, which is unique because it's one of the first actual full fitness trackers to do that.
Cool.
Most of them that I've seen have to be the chest bands. And I think the Bio Strap does it, but then I think that's also a strap. But the wrist watches that we have, they won't do it for the most part. It has to be something that is specifically for it.
And so to just like bring this back all together, heart rate variability is a way to sort of measure. My dad's a cardiologist, so he talks about heart rate variability from the like illness perspective, when people
Oh,
are like
yeah.
have heart attacks and they have
Yeah.
like terrible conditions, their heart rate, it's one of the measures of health.
Mhm.
But when it comes to wellness, so that you don't get to the point where you're seeing him having a heart attack or having, arrhythmia or something, um, you have to think about heart rate variability. It's a measure of how healthy you are. And so the point that I think we're talking about here is like, if you are managing all of these biorhythms and your health and your mental health as well, your mental wellness, I should say, well-being, and you have strong heart rate variability, there's a lot of variability in the way your heart is responding to stress, then you can think more clearly as well. You can focus, you have more energy, and therefore the time that you spend on the work that you're doing ends up making you essentially, you can make more money. So when it's like, it's more effective. And when people say like, oh God, I just wish I could make more money, let's just look at the surface level of make more money. It's not like, what is everything I'm doing in my life that is causing me to be ineffective and therefore not make money, as opposed to like, oh, I should just get this new software.
Oh, absolutely. It's looking at it from that holistic perspective of how can I optimize the performance of my brain? I always come back to that because whether we're applying it to, like we said, businesses, relationships, whatever it might be, our ability to take our brain from 50 to 60% up to 90% is key. And the one of the examples that I like to relate it to, because I find it makes so much sense, it's it would be like walking into the Apple store and saying, give me your highest spec, largest, biggest, baddest computer you have. I want that. And you walk home, you put it in the closet, you shut the door, and you never ever take it out. That is the equivalent to what I feel like most of us are treating our brains with the lack of sleep, the poor nutrition, no exercise. We're not managing our minds. We're not getting coaching, all of those kind of things. Like that is how I feel that we treat our brains. So I love the idea of like, what if we took that computer out of the cupboard, opened it up, fired it up, see what it's capable of, install the programs that get it optimized and working quickly? Like that's what you do with a piece of equipment like that. Like we have the most incredible machine in our heads. And we are walking around like we've shut it away in the cupboard and we're just basically surfing the net on a basic laptop. That's what we're acting like. So I'm just like, no, no, no. Your brain is capable of so much more. Let me show you how. It's so fun.
And your body. I mean, there's like talk of mind body connection
Absolutely.
as if they're separate, but they're
Yeah.
not separate. It's not like your head is one floaty thing, like one piece of equipment, and the rest of your body is like this other thing, and you have to somehow get them to work together. You know,
Mhm.
they're all connected. I mean, if you eat this or you eat that, and then your brain works in one way or the other. I mean, they're directly connected. And um, I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm not thinking, what is the mind body connection? No, it's more like
Who am
it has
I?
to be more holistic. Yeah, I mean, like what's working, what's not working, and all of those things are involved.
Yep, definitely.
You know, like the screen on your computer doesn't work without everything else on the computer, or I don't know, maybe that's not a good
No,
metaphor.
it totally
I'm
makes
trying
sense
to go with
without the
the
mind you, I'm not computer knowledgeable here, but like without your motherboard or your plugging into the wall or the memory or the video card, like it's not gonna work.
right. Those are all organs, and they all function, and they all need the electric plug that you put into them.
Mhm.
Um, and you can't overload it, and you can't undercharge it, and
Mhm.
it all
Yeah,
works together. Um,
absolutely.
uh, well, Tanessa, it's been we've been talking for a little while. I feel like we could keep going on and on and on, but at some point, people are watching this are going to go, all right, shut up, you guys. Um, so if people want to learn more about you, um, I believe you have kind of a giveaway thing. What do they do?
Yeah, so I have a playbook and it's called 12 ways to biohack your energy. So it's along the lines of the stuff we talked about, like turning the temperature down in your bedroom and all of these things like that that can really help you wake up fully energized. Because like we said, that is going to contribute to how you experience your life. So that 12 ways to biohack your energy playbook is at tanessashears.com/energy. But otherwise I hang out on Instagram. I'm there all the time, just, posting stuff, showing behind the scenes, what I'm working on, all that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, I'm going to check that out. And likewise, I'm hanging out on Instagram too. Happy to chat. If any of this applies to you, and if you want to know how to kind of personalize it so that it isn't like this one directional thing where we're just talking at you, reach out and we can help you apply this to your specific situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with that, thank you so much for talking, Tanessa. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good one.
Have a good one.